Hello and welcome back to the East Lake Pet Talk podcast. I'm veterinarian Dr. Karen Fling.
And I'm Dr. Will McCauley. I'd like to welcome all our viewers back to episode 29. Last week we had a really great show with a guest here. We had Rebecca Miller. And this week we actually have another guest, Ms. Amy Tabor.
Right. Amy, we are so glad to have you here. And as we talked about last week, training is so very important. And that's kind of what you're all about, isn't it? And you literally came from helping dogs to join us here today for the podcast.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your passions and what really got you excited about dog training.
Well, back when I started with my original German Shepherd, the first one I ever trained was in 1991, I guess. And back then, I didn't know anything about dog sports. I don't even know if there were dog sports. So I just fell in love with obedience training. And in 2002, I found out about agility.
Yes,
and
that's
is
where
my
it all
passion.
started.
And we travel all over the country and compete almost every weekend. I got my husband into it now. He's got a dog.
Good. And these dogs that do the agility and do all this traveling, you were saying that they're really well-behaved dogs, right?
Yes, they have to be well-mannered in the hotels, and the owners also have to be well-mannered, pick up after their dogs, not let them run loose.
Right.
And that's a big reason I became a Canine Good Citizen instructor, was to encourage that.
Right, and I remember you saying that you were so happy when people participated in that program because you didn't want somebody not to like your dogs because of some other dog's bad behavior.
Yes, because there have been cases where a lot of the show dogs were getting thrown out of hotels because someone's pet was going to the bathroom in the hallway.
Oh, that's not good.
No.
Tell us about this Canine Good Citizen program or project. What is that?
It's a 10-step program, and it's done by the AKC, and you take the dog through a series of tests like combing their hair, touching their feet, petting them, having them walk past another dog. There's 10 different things that they have to do. They have to be separated from their owner and held by a stranger for 3 minutes, which seems like an eternity when you're in the other room while it's going. And the owners are also educated. They need to make sure their dogs have proper play and veterinary care and attention and all of those things, and not let their dogs run loose. And
that's great. That's great. And even though it's sponsored or kind of under the AKC umbrella, any dog can do this, can't they?
Right. Mixed breed, anybody can come and just take a test if you feel like your dog
already has those skills.
That's great.
That. Well, and that's really nice to have that certification. And actually, we do offer, with Amy's guidance, some of the Canine Good Citizenship classes right there at East Lake. So if anybody wants more information on that, they can call us at East Lake at 214-342-3100. But even for people that aren't going to go through that certification right now, I think it's so important to really understand dog body language, don't you?
Oh, definitely.
And what are some of the tips that you offer people? What are some of the things relative to body language that help you know what to look for in terms of whether a pet is aggressive or relaxed? What about tail wagging? Tell me about that.
Well, if their tail is down, that can mean they're scared. If their tail is up, that doesn't necessarily mean they're being friendly. If their tail is up and very stiff and they're staring at you, they're not saying, "Come pet me."
Okay.
Things like that.
And if the tail is wagging, do you automatically say, "Hey, I'm home free. This is a nice dog"?
No.
Okay. Tell us about that.
A lot of times dogs that are really stressed, that's one of the things that they'll do. Mm-hmm. If they're wagging their tail and they're doing things like licking their lips or yawning a lot, they're stressed. And they're wagging their tail out of stress, and you don't really want to mess with them.
Yeah,
so
it's more of the whole amalgam of things that they're showing. So not just the tail wagging, but where the ears are, if they're perked up, if they're pulled back into the head. Of course, if they're snarling or something like that, that's a pretty clear sign. But other times, if they're very active and wanting to get around, you don't know if they want to come see you or if they're trying to get away and go hide. And so it's important to take into consideration what the context is of all that behavior.
Exactly. And usually if they're wanting to get away from you, their body language is very low. They're trying to make themselves look small.
Okay, so kind of crouch down. And what other body language tips are helpful to know
about?
Well,
if they're standing in a relaxed manner, you can pretty much tell. You can tell the difference between crouched down, relaxed manner, or they're really stiff and standing very straight, and that means they're on very high alert. And that's a dog you really don't want to approach.
I know some of the nurses up at East Lake will say, "Oh, that one has side eye," and I was going, "What is that?" And I thought, "Oh, that's what the dogs that won't look right at you. They won't have direct eye contact because that is an aggressive stance for dogs." And so what they'll do is they'll kind of look at you like this, and that means they're nervous, they're scared, they want to keep an eye on you, but they don't want to have that direct eye contact.
And actually, I learned that lesson when I was just in 6th grade about the eye contact. A girlfriend of mine said, "Hey, look at my dog right in the eyes." And I did. I didn't know any better. And before I knew it, I had an 80-pound Doberman on top of me.
Oh, no.
And so fortunately, nothing happened, and the dog wasn't really aggressive, but it was scary.
Friends like that, my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she thought it was funny, but it's important to have these conversations with children, especially because most of the bite incidences that happen are with young children. A little bit higher incidence with male children, and typically we're looking in the kids between the age of 9 and 10, and maybe up to 11 is the highest bitten age bracket. So body language really, really is so important.
Yeah.
And I always say for new veterinary technicians and people working in pet care, as they come into that in a new regard, or new pet owners, these things are really important to understand.
Yes,
So-
well, that's how border collies herd sheep. They stare at them.
Give them
And
the look.
Very interesting. Well, Amy, you have so much great information, and we'd love to see you back on the show to help us know more and understand more about body language and the various postures to avoid. And we'd love to have you back to talk about agility. And so,
I would love that. That's my
Okay.
favorite subject.
All right. Well, I know you've got a crazy busy schedule and you're off to go train some more dogs. So we'll say our goodbyes and we'll come back in just a moment after the break. Well, that was a lot of fun having Amy join us, wasn't it?
It's great having an expert in dog behavior and the training to talk about it. She has a lot of good information to give.
Yes, she really
A lot of
does.
great questions to answer. If
Right.
any of our viewers do have some questions they'd like us to address, you can always give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 972-808-6038 or send us an email at podcast@welovepets.net.
And we're just inches away from getting our ability to be on iHeartRadio.
So close.
Please subscribe to YouTube. Your subscription could be the difference in us being available on that platform.
Could be the one that makes it. Yeah, we talked about weather last week, and
Right.
talked about all the creatures that were coming out. And I know
Oh, my goodness.
we've seen a big increase in the number of snakes now coming
Right,
out, and we knew it was
right.
coming. So it's,
Yes, I drove home the other day and drove over and straddled what looked like a 5-foot rattlesnake. And when I went back and tried to back up and see what it really was, it was gone.
Oh,
So
wow.
who knows
Could have
where?
been,
Right in
yeah.
the neighborhood.
they'll be out and about. So
Yes.
we definitely don't want to, if there's one somewhere you have to get around, be very careful, get a wide berth, but
Right.
best thing is just don't approach them. Just
Right,
leave them
right.
alone.
And somebody reached out to us and said they had one on their front porch
Yeah.
the other day. People are seeing them all over. And you do need to be aware of snake bite incidences with your dogs and
Right.
cats, but particularly the dogs. And you may want to be aware and check out with your veterinarian or your emergency clinics to find out if they have that venom vet that we've talked about, which is the reversal agent to combat.
That's right. That
the
antivenom is
snake
very important.
toxin.
Dogs a lot of times get bit in the face because they're down sniffing. Cats a lot of times get bit on the feet because they're pawing at it.
Right.
And both those are areas where if they get like an IV injection almost of that venom, it can be really bad. And so you
Right.
need to know where the closest antivenom clinic is.
Right, right. Very dangerous stuff. So be prepared. And talking about being prepared and the weather, with all the rain that we've had, at least in our part of the world, and just the time of year, mosquitoes are really a big risk. And
Sometimes I think I'd rather deal with snakes than mosquitoes, honestly. As bad as
at
they
least
are.
you can see them a little
Yeah,
easier.
exactly.
Well, I was so shocked to see this flyer. And Roderick, can you cut to this and let us take a look at this? This was actually something that came in my water bill this month, and it talks about fighting West Nile virus and the chikungunya virus. And these are two very dangerous viruses that mosquitoes carry. And of course, at dusk and dawn, you do want to try to stay indoors, and that is the time of day that most mosquitoes are active. Although some of these mosquitoes that carry these diseases really are daytime active, and at least where chikungunya is concerned, a lot of times we see chikungunya in more urban areas.
Right.
But also it is present in high numbers in the Caribbean, South America, Central America, but it's been in Africa, Europe, China, just a little bit of everywhere. And in fact, just this last year was the first U.S. case of chikungunya.
I like this handout because it talks about the 4 Ds to prevent mosquitoes in your area. Like you said, the big big thing is to avoid dusk till dawn, because that is the highest concentration of mosquitoes when they're out and prone to bite.
Absolutely. And if you have to be out, you want to dress accordingly to where you keep your body covered, and long sleeves are ideal, long pants. And it's, even though it's warm, to wear those sort of things, some of the new materials really are a lot more breathable, and they keep you safe. And you definitely want to defend yourself by using repellents and following label instructions. And there are some different options with repellents. DEET is one option, and then the oil of eucalyptus, lemon eucalyptus. Yes, that Rebecca mentioned last week, Rebecca Miller. And then, of course, drain standing water
really
in your
important
yard.
on that one.
Oh my goodness, yes. And sometimes just a thimble-sized little bit of water is enough to create a big deal with mosquitoes. Flower pots, empty tires, things like that. Any places in your yard or around your property. Bird baths. You know, we love bird baths, but that's a mosquito breeding ground.
Empty it out and clean it out every once in a while. It can definitely do have a lot of benefit.
Right. And with both of these viruses that are carried by mosquitoes, the symptoms we think about are a lot of times flu-like sort of symptoms, joint aches, fevers, and while the vast majority of people that are exposed to either one of these viruses do recover, there is a small percentage, for example, with the West Nile virus. I think it's only 1% that really gets severely ill with the neurologic symptoms, and of that 1%, I think 10% of those don't recover and actually die.
Right.
And chikungunya, that's another one. That can be something that's a chronic, long-term disease that takes weeks or months to recover from, and it's also known as broke bone fever because apparently your joints and your bones hurt so very, very badly.
Feels like
with
they're
that.
breaking.
Feels like they're breaking.
Avoid that. Avoid the mosquitoes and the snakes. Avoid all wildlife. And one of our pet news stories actually kind of reinforces that. You may have seen this. There was a woman, an American tourist, actually in a safari park in Africa, who was killed in a vehicle by a lioness that attacked her. They were told to have the windows up the entire time. This poor woman, she did roll the window down. The lion was able to get in and maul her, and she did die.
What an awful, awful story.
Yeah, so we don't have lions over here, thank goodness, but we do have wildlife that can cause harm, and so it's best just to give them a wide berth, stay away, observe them all you want to, but let them be.
Keep the windows up. And I always say you can take the animal out of the wild, but not the wild out of the animal.
Very true, very true.
Best to be cautious. And speaking of cautious, what about this bird flu thing going on? That's awful.
Yeah, this may have been more under the radar, but actually the Midwest in the U.S. from Minnesota, down through Nebraska is seeing a huge outbreak in bird flu, more specifically avian influenza. We're seeing this mostly in the production of broiler chickens, layer chickens, and turkeys. We actually lost 46 million of these poultry birds
That's a lot of
this
birds.
disease. It's a ton of birds, and actually we're seeing a skyrocketing in egg prices as well as egg products and meat products. And the big fear is that what if this virus has the potential to mutate and become a human pathogen? The deadliest disease by far that we've had in the last 200 years was the Spanish influenza epidemic, in I think it was the late 1800s, early 1900s, that killed just millions of people. And so the fear is, as pathogenic and as easily spread as this is, if this makes the jump to humans, it could be a huge problem.
Right. And, I mentioned not too long ago that one of my daughters was in the emergency room, and they said that locally there was a huge uptick in type B flu. So, here we are in the spring headed to summer, and we're all worried about the flu.
Yeah, exactly. It's turned into a year-round thing.
I know. And you'd think in this day and time that we'd be ahead of this sort of thing.
That's the thing about viral diseases, though. They mutate so quickly that they are able to get around a lot of our vaccines, a lot of our treatments, and so it's kind of a moving target we still have to hit.
Right. Well, I tell you what. Well, we'll stay tuned to more news on that.
Keep you updated on that.
And speaking of news, we've got some happy news
this
week.
Yes.
Yes. Heidi, who's been one of our long-term orphanage pets at East Lake Pet Orphanage, we think may have her actual forever home.
That's right.
And she's in a foster-to-adopt kind of arrangement right now, where she's being tried out by a new family. And George and Gloria, as I said earlier, there's a place in heaven for you for taking Heidi in and working with her. And gosh, there's so many people that have been behind Heidi's, great story. Beautiful dog, but so shy, so timid. Came out of an awful puppy mill situation. And I think we've got a picture of her here in the cage cage that she originally was in, little tiny wire cage, and used as a puppy mill dog. So it is so great to see her in this new home with her beloved companion Teddy. And Teddy's a bit younger, and we actually think, because these two look so similar, that it's possible that Teddy, who was also a rescue, might even be Heidi's son. So
Could
what
be.
a joyous
Yeah,
story.
that'd be great. Yeah, get them in the
Yes.
house together. That is
Yeah.
great. We still do have a lot of animals up there at Elpo, though, and need to have homes. One of the local favorites right now is Vanya, this
Oh, yeah.
mama kitty who did a great job raising up these kittens that she's had. So we have them taken care of. We're going to need to have a home for all the kittens as well as mama. So if you
Right.
do have any interest, definitely check us out.
Right. And I tell you what, this mama cat is so sweet. And as we've said before, so often the kitties get swept away and get homes right off the bat. But let's not forget our
It's a
moms.
sweet mama.
Yes. Well, and also don't forget to call us or email us and let us know your questions and what you're interested in seeing us cover here on the show. And Dr. McCauley, how should people reach us?
As always, leave us a voicemail at 972-808-6038 or shoot us an email at podcast@welovepets.net. That's about all our time for today. Had a great guest, some great topics, so we do look forward to seeing you next week. For Dr. Karen Fleen, I'm Dr. Will McCauley. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.